Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're just getting started here in 1 minute, but we'll let everybody join in. The chat should be enabled, so please drop in a little hello and tell us what community you're coming from today. And I'll start it. If you know the treaty territory or the traditional name, drop it in there too. It's always cool to learn more about that. Awesome. So we're right at top of the hour. We'll give folks another, let's say, 60 seconds or so. We are recording this, so don't worry about if anybody on your team wasn't able to come. We can make sure they get the recording afterwards. Okay, so we've got Lloydminster, Treaty 6, right next door here. Peace River, Treaty 8, wonderful. And that's Mark Wojciech and Michael Dajczuk. Ukrainian backgrounds, I'm guessing, maybe. Right. And Sarah from traditional territory number 8, Grand Prairie, Alberta. Hello. Grand Prairie, I was just spending some time with a GP at the Seven Cities Conference last week. Awesome to see you. All right, we've got quite a few more folks. So if people want to say hello in the chat and what city, treaty territory you're coming from, just while everybody's settling in and before we get the party started. We're at 24 attendees, which is, I think, about what we were expecting from the sign up, but maybe we'll give people a couple more seconds. Sarah, Town of Canmore, Treaty 7, cool. Kenora, Treaty 3, oh, interesting area in Kenora up there. Really vast territories that you guys have a service catchment of. So welcome, Stace, Prince Edward County, southeastern Ontario. You must be so annoyed with people thinking you're in PEI, hey? Mark from St. Catharines, Lake to the Lake Treaty. Cool, Lake to Lake Treaty. Nice, cool treaty name. Okay, amazing, amazing. Well, keep dropping that in there. Oh, we've got somebody that's got their BC. Oh, Dina, you just had to show off, hey? Dina from supporting City of Mission. And I will not even try to pronounce those. She can tell us otherwise. Chatham, Kent, and then another fellow Calgarian here, Devin. Amazing. So I think I'm going to just get us started because we've got tons to get through. And here's our PA, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan Rep 2. So I think we've got most of the country covered. But welcome, everyone. I'm sure you're all keen to hear a little bit about what HelpSeeker is up to when it comes to the Housing Accelerator Fund that's being delivered by Canada Mortgage and Housing for municipalities specifically, as well as First Nations communities and the territory. So it's a significant opportunity. What I wanted to say before we get going is to make sure we all know what we're here to look at. So the Housing Accelerator Fund, and this is straight from CMHC, this is not our words. It's an incentive funding for local governments like yourselves. And that includes First Nations and Indigenous communities as well. But it's really meant to accelerate and transform how housing supply is being delivered and really accelerate it essentially at that local level. The big important thing to note is that there is an application process that's got a very tight window. The application form the electronic portal hasn't been launched yet. We know what's going to happen. Again, best guesses, right, at the end of this month, but it's only going to stay open for 45 days. So it's a really tight turnaround for communities to make this application. Now, For us and our relationship with this fund, I just want to make sure you know, we are not sponsored by CMHC to do this work, but we do have, I think it's going to be an interesting proposition for you guys to consider if you need some support in getting this done. So there's a couple other considerations too, and I see that folks are coming from both smaller communities as well as large and urban. So I'll try to make a note when we're referring to either kind of segment of this. But just to reassure you that if you are a smaller community, you're still eligible. So again, a big point here is that time is of the essence here. So preparing the HAF application process is intricate. I would say CMHC has done a fantastic job to boil this stuff down and give us tons and tons of tools on streamlining it for ourselves. At the same time, there's still quite a bit of pre-work that communities need to do to get ready to apply for this funding still. A big thing to know is that administration and council support and buy-in for what's being applied for is going to be really critical. And there's, of course, the caveat that this is a competitive process, so there's no guarantee of funding at the end of the day. And CMHC has given some evaluation criteria, what they're going to be looking for, but understanding that and making sure that you're going in with a strong application that's looking at maximizing the points you're going to be able to score is going to be critical. So the reason why HelpSeekers come up with this concept of a solution package is because we've been getting approached by communities in different parts of Canada that are struggling with just having enough manpower to put towards this pre-work part. And as one example of a community I was connecting with last week, they said they've put about 100 hours already of staff time just to get to the point of having a draft application. And they know that there's going to be more time to be spent just to get it into the portal format because they don't know what the portal is going to look like. So we said, well, we have this back-end technology from HelpSeekers and where we develop a lot of the data sets that are necessary for this work to happen. So can we offer something to streamline on your guys' end, getting your draft action plans, your draft application essentially, to be ready to go as quickly as possible. So things like the research on the data, the projections, the internal policy review, the jurisdictional scan, these data pulls that you need to have, not just for the CMHC application, but to get buy-in from your council and your administration to get this going. So that's the concept here, is looking at using our team to complement and be an extension of your team. We have 25 FTEs that are data science and social policy experts that can really accelerate and get this done really quickly so that you have a head start on this application. So again, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get the funding. It's really a way to get some technical support so that you can streamline, especially if you don't have data analysts or people that are comfortable with data around projections, or even people that are good at filling out the forms and putting things in the format that is required for this. So the other good thing about us, and it 100% is a sales pitch, is that we have affordable housing, homelessness, and social impact expertise. So we're able to use tech and we're able to leverage our expertise to streamline this for you. We think it's a sweet spot for especially smaller communities that don't have social policy teams or affordable housing teams as well, that just it's off of somebody's side of their desk as well. So our deliverables, and I think you saw in our package that we would be looking at developing your action plan, initiative information, targets, and other estimates, providing your social data trends profile, and I'll get into what this looks like in a little bit more detail. We would also be giving you guys a 12-month subscription to our data analytics platform, which is called Cardo, because we also know that if you are successful, there is going to be a requirement to have a housing needs assessment, a recent housing needs assessment, and this is going to really help you streamline that next part should you wish to leverage it. So the CARDO piece is a $5,000 license currently in the marketplace. We're putting the half application support and the CARDO license for a year for you for $5,000. And again, it's part of our efforts to ensure, especially smaller communities, have a really, really solid chance at getting at this funding, because we're seeing that it's homelessness in these smaller communities that is accelerating the fastest across the country. And on a per capita basis, smaller cities are now having homelessness challenges that are 50% higher, for instance, than some of the big, large urban centers. So it's ensuring that we're stemming some of this inflow into urban centers, but also stabilizing smaller communities earlier in their trajectory. So the package overview and how this would work, if you are interested, is before we even meet with you, and let's say you wanted to proceed and we sign off on the $5,000 payment, we would begin that social data trends analysis, a half questionnaire that would be coming to you just to get some initial insights on where your community's at. We'd be looking at local policy review as well. Some of the stuff is online for you already. Some of it you'll need to flip it over to us if it's internal. And then projections preparation. So actually looking at what it would take to get at this funding and telling you what those targets would need to be to get the bare minimum. And then we can talk about pushing the envelope, if you will, once we understand where you're at. We would then have an onboarding meeting to talk about the various scenarios in terms of initiatives you can take on. From there, we would actually deliver the action plan, milestones, timelines, et cetera, as well as projections. You would take a look at that, and then we would have a refinement meeting so that we can then finalize that. So we'd be looking at these chunks of time. So 48 hours for that initial draft, and these are work hours or 2 work days, just FYI. And then depending on how much feedback happens here, then 24 to 48 hours. So it's a pretty streamlined process, as you can see. It can be done, like I said, within pretty short turnaround, which is great. And then the CARDO membership, that's really an ongoing membership for 12 months. That one's not as tight, right? There's not like a crazy timeline. It's there for you. It's a do-it-yourself social needs assessment, do-it-yourself housing needs assessment type of a platform. So we can schedule an onboarding meeting for you and get that going, but it's obviously not requirement for the CMHC application. It's a feature that or a benefit of being part of this cohort. So that's the overview of what this would look like. Now, how would this actually look? So I pulled a couple of things on this is straight from CMHC's guide, the pre-application reference material. Like I said, they've done a really great job being very transparent about all this and telling us what to expect. But as you can see here, targets and estimates, everything from projections and the types of initiatives. And smaller communities, those under 10,000, they need to have 5 initiatives. The larger ones have to have a minimum of 7 initiatives. You can have more, but the 5 and 7 is their requirement and what they're looking at. And then it's about projections of net new units in your housing supply that would be generated thanks to all of these initiatives that would otherwise not happen, right? So the concept being that without this funding, you would have a particular trajectory. With this funding, you would have a different trajectory. So that's why there's so much about some of these numbers and units, et cetera. There's a little bit about how we are trying to approach this. So first, we want to make it as straightforward and efficient as possible. We want to get as much information about your community from open sources so we don't bother you, but also knowing that there might be some things that are not publicly available, and we'll need your help to do that. And this would all inform a ready to submit action plan that we would bring to you. Obviously, you're free to massage it and edit it as it's going to be yours to do as you wish. And our goal is to help you develop a compelling proposal that aligns with the objectives and the evaluation criteria of the HAF. So again, package supports your success, but it cannot guarantee it. Of course, it's a competitive process and nobody has control over that either. What we would be needing from you in the onboarding process. It's really completing that online payment form to get this thing going, reviewing materials from us. So we're going to be sending you jurisdictional reviews and best practices, booking that onboarding meeting, making sure we get that on the books ASAP with the right people. And then again, if there's policy internal documents to do with housing initiatives that are not publicly available, to get those over to us. There is a requirement to have historical permit data that goes part of that's in this application draft. And what we know is the Statistics Canada does collect some of this stuff, but when we took a look at it deeper, it's the coverage in terms of small communities is very, very poor, which means we can really rely on that Statistics Canada data set in a systematic way. So that AKA we're gonna need to lean on you guys to run over to the permit department and get some of the numbers from 2018 to 2022 so that we can put this as part of the package. And again, in delivery, same thing. When we send you stuff to review it, having those feedback meetings and giving us that feedback, helping us and helping, well, it's your community, so helping prioritize those top 5-7 initiatives for finalization, and then giving us feedback on refinement for that final draft. So as much as us being able to streamline this and bringing the cost down to $5,000 to get this done is going to require both sides to work in a very streamlined fashion to do that, because at the end of the day, it's, hours spent equals resources that could be going elsewhere. So here's an example of a half package, and please excuse that this is a anonymized example, because again, it is a competitive process, but this is a city, 9,889 is their population, just under that 10,000. All data that I'm referencing here is 2021 and 2016 census, because again, that's the official data set that is referenced in the half, and therefore the one that we're going to be working with as well. So I wanted to give you an idea of what to expect that's going to be coming during that onboarding process. So first is the demographic profile of this community. So this is a screenshot from Cardo, and this is also why we're able to do some of this work so much quicker, is because we already have all this stuff ready to go. So we can just pick the community and take a look at your basic demographics really quickly, look at where you're at in comparison to other communities as well. Social data trends as well. Like I said, this is not to go in depth about this community. This is just to give you an idea of what kind of analysis to expect from us. So things like population growth, dwellings increase, affordability, owner affordability, needing to look at what's happening in your community, because obviously that's going to need to impact what kind of initiatives are going to work the best locally for you as well. We've got tons and tons of initiatives that you can choose from. So in this specific community, you can see pretty marginal population growth, higher private dwellings, but again, it's not a community that's growing very quickly, but we know they've got core housing need challenges, but interestingly, they've been decreasing. So what's going on? We look at income changes. So looking at income patterns and those of lower income households as well, to understand, is there a major need for affordable housing, specifically social housing? What's the income distribution look like? And again, this again gives us some clues about what might be tailor-made for this specific community, because every single one is a little bit different. A little bit further too on, and in this case, I picked on higher concentrations of seniors, because I saw in their profile that their seniors population is actually growing faster than any other segment. And then I also wanted to look at apartment and buildings that have fewer than 5 stories. So specifically thinking through, is there opportunities for this community to have something targeted towards seniors that's more accessible? So, and if so, where would that be? And of course, in the meeting with this particular community, we want to say, does this actually align with your zoning as well, right? So if we make a proposal to increase this type of housing type, is this going to line up with, or is there going to be zoning changes that need to happen? If there are, then that's okay. That can be part of your initiatives in the CMHC application too. But this is the kind of stuff that we would be looking at. Industry changes and understanding exactly where some of the ups and downs are happening in terms of workforce housing as well. So again, you can see in this specific community, major job losses in agriculture, forestry, fishing, but job growth in utilities, construction, retail. Interesting, but overall decline, right, in all of these industries too. So if we are going to have some key worker housing initiatives, then we have a better idea of specifically where to target those as well. And then housing changes, really importantly, and this is a really, really critical one because this is semi-detached row housing, apartment flats, apartments in buildings with fewer than 5 stories or 5 or more stories, and single detached. You can see this community has had significant growth in the semi-detached and in these smaller apartment buildings, which is interesting because that's a good thing because those are higher density and align better with the CMHC focus on sustainability and climate resilience too. But what's of note here is it's relatively low. So we're only looking at, pretty minimal growth year over year when you divide it, right? Because this is 2016 versus 2021. So that's meaning that there's going to be some challenges for this community to get at those targets. Same thing here. I wanted to show you the age-specific analysis too, because what you're seeing is the age challenge coming to the fore. That this is a community that's aging faster, and it's actually losing populations that are of younger. So, yes, we can do family housing. Yes, we can do key worker housing, but look at how much it's changing when it comes to the senior population. And it's actually quite significant. In other communities, we see it, but not to this extent. This is unique, not unique, but it's notable. So again, we would want to see something to do with seniors in this community. So if I was having my onboarding meeting, which I will with this community, here's the types of initiatives I would bring to them as a potential. So those multi-unit housing components, because we know those align with this, they're going to have to be really accessible for those senior population. Accessory dwelling units, because again, that's a relatively low cost initiative to add densification to this area. Reviewing those zoning applications, incentivizing development, affordable housing programs, because they do have core housing need. Some of these public-private partnerships specifically to add new funding streams to match the HAF would be another consideration. Some of these work for housing, affordable rental housing, and affordability for homeowners, because we know these are, again, from the data, the areas for them to look at. Now, that's interesting following the data story. But when we look at what they already have in place from their jurisdictional review, we can see that they've already got some initiatives around affordable housing. They've got multi-housing incentives, multi-unit housing incentives for developers. They have a homeowner program and grant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they do have a bunch of things happening. And what we found out in the onboarding is that the cost of building has actually been one of the major reasons why their multi-unit housing incentive hasn't been that successful in getting more units. And that's because this is a northern town and the cost of building is so high. So again, that's telling us something about, let's build off of initiatives that are in place, but let's amplify them. So a use of the HAF funding might be to add even more incentive to make, because whatever the city was putting in wasn't tipping the scales to the development and building industry to take this on. So for them, that is becoming a major area for them to double down on. The CMHC alignment too, so giving the community a sense of, okay, that's this is what the data tells us. This is what is currently happening in your community and what you're doing and what's working, not working. Here's the ones that would fit the best with CMHC's prioritization, because again, we're wanting to give you more points for sustainability, more points for higher density. You get additional top-up funding if you have kind of more units per site, etc. So your single family home is not going to get you as many points as your affordable housing multi-unit type of building. So again, giving them the discussion on, or fodder for a healthy discussion on what's going to work best. Now let's take a look at the lowest cost, highest impact on supply as well for this community. Accessory dwelling units, again, you can come up with some nice packages for homeowners to add those units for students, for lower income renters, etc., allowing increased housing density. That's an easy, relatively cheap one to do as well. Promoting infill development, so new homes on vacant land, reducing and those urban design guidelines. So there's a lot of things that we can do that are not going to cost us as much as, fully subsidizing an affordable housing unit from top to bottom, for instance. And then building off of current initiatives. So there might be an interest in the community to actually, take what they already have and build off of those current initiatives further. So again, I'm giving you an example of what the thinking process would be for this specific community, not to say that this is what you should do in your community. But this is essentially the discussion, right? So we have scenarios. Do we want to maximize alignment with CMHC? Do we want this lowest cost leveraging our current resources? Or do we want to do something more creative? And let's, pick and choose our poison, if you will. With maximizing this component, though, we need to keep in mind the baseline projections on just meeting the requirements of the fund. So to secure the Housing Accelerator Fund, and as we look at all of these initiatives, there's something really critical to keep in mind, which is that the city needs to meet that minimum housing growth rate of 1.1% annually in the supply, and they have to show a 10% improvement over the previous growth rate. So for this community, and again, I showed you their dwelling units before 2016 to 2021. So that means that for them, they would need to add 53 new housing units per year for the 3 years of the CMHC funding. So they need 50 units for that 1.1 annual growth, and they need extra 3 units to get that 10% increase over the past growth rate. So over that 3 years, they need to add 159 units. Of these, 90 would be eligible for that financial incentive. And if we play it right and do a nice combination of affordable housing, kind of higher density type of initiatives, and ensure that we don't have those single family homes being incentivized, then we should be able to get around that 31,000 per incentivized unit. So for them, that's a nice package for sure. You can see it's about $2.8 million that they would be applying for in this case. But what's important here, and a really, really, really big one for this community to consider, is that this is a big and significant change in their trajectory, which is exactly what this money's for, right? That it's meant to accelerate housing supply. It's not meant to tweak it. It's meant to accelerate it. So for them, they would be looking at 130% in new housing units per year, comparing scenarios between the with half and without half. So this community needs to be actually ready and capable of delivering on this. So it's also a bit of a sanity check to say, which of these initiatives are going to get us there, right? And so that's what that second meeting with us is about, is to kind of strategize the best path forward that's going to make sure you hit your targets and expectations, but you're also maximizing the funding to ensure that you're successful during that process, and successful longer term in your community. So this is the kind of a finalized, let's say, version that this hypothetical community says this is what we're going to go with. these 7 initiatives, and some of them are costlier than others, of course. And then from here, we would be taking these and actually filling out this action plan. And as you can see here, there's numbers that we need to describe. How many of those would be single detached versus multi-unit, the missing middle, etc. And then we would need to describe exactly what these various initiatives, what their expected results would be, their description, their start date, their milestones, completion date, expected evaluation, alignment as well. So every one of these 7 that I showed you before, these final 7 would have their own initiative sheet, so that you can kind of cut and paste into the application once it becomes open. So that's kind of the gist of it, guys. I'll show you a little bit about the social data trends profile too. I think I gave you a good idea when I walked you through this fake community, but just to give you a sense that, it'll give you a good head start on your own internal discussions, and we have to do it to do a good job on tailoring this stuff for you. 5 to 10 pages, depends how hardcore we get into this and how unique your community is. But yeah, basic things like demographics, your housing market, your socioeconomics, just understanding what's happening in the community, so that you also have a paper trail on why you decided to go with this. And it gives you a head start if you don't have a housing needs assessment as well, which you would have to have at some point. And then the Cardo subscription, I think it's really great, but essentially think of it as your do-it-yourself housing needs assessment. So automating some of these analyses and having the data in one place with insights, so that you're not having to, go to StatsCan, pull the data, make charts, etc. So it looks at streamlining this for you, and I'll show you a little bit about the kinds of data that's in there. Sorry. So things like, average rent, population growth, but as you can see down here, automating the summary analysis and recommendations. So that's the value add in coming on with us versus another consultant, is that they usually don't have technology to go along with this. Here's another one if you wanted to look at your supply access as well, and what available social support services there are in the community to get a sense of proximity. Not as interesting for this application, but I'm sure there's other use cases for your community social planning or land use planning that might be valuable to draw from here. And I think that's it for my presentation. I'll open it up now for Q&A. All right, and let's see. 46 participants. Okay, it grew while I was presenting, and I think you guys can drop questions into the chat. Let me see. Or comms. Do we see any questions? Contact information. Okay. Oh, I see some Q&A. All right. Funding available to replace housing that has reached end of life. Ooh, well, the key thing there is that you need to show how you're adding supply versus maintaining supply. So we would need to look at, I would say, Michael, we need to look at the full spectrum of what's happening in the community to see where that particular initiative might fit or not fit, because essentially we need to make sure that you're meeting those growth targets as well. If you're only looking at maintaining, I'm not a CMHC to tell you this, but if you're not growing that if you're not meeting that 1.1 supply growth and showing that variance between half and without half of 10%, then you wouldn't even be eligible. So we need to look at growing the supply, but I would say it's definitely not a no. It's let's see what the other initiatives look like. For the service that HelpSeeker provides, is the fee for service a flat? Yes, it's flat of 5,000. I think it's 49999, just because some of you guys said you can't sign over 5,000. So I think we made it 4,999. Copy of the slide deck, sure. Do you marshal the application through CMHC, or does the municipality carry this forward once the application has been submitted? No, that's on y'all, because we can't represent you in the relationship with CMHC. They're going to be communicating directly with you guys. What we're going to be able to do is give you the package to cut and paste into the application form. Can you provide an idea of your fee structure? It's a flat fee of 4,999. Sydney. Yep. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, somebody asked about our contact information. Let's see. Well, you can here. I'll give you from the horse's mouth here. Travis at HelpSeeker.org. The entire process is online too. If you go to HelpSeeker.org under solutions, we can. That's essentially where you start the process, and we begin the processing of the information from you. So you can start it online, or you can email Travis if you're not an online kind of person. We don't want that to be a barrier to you, and just let him know that you'd like to proceed with this. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. Well, I'm sure you have very exciting things to do in your work. So I'm happy to stay on if anybody wants to have more time. And look forward to seeing what comes in from you guys. Would look forward to supporting you through this. I think it's an unprecedented opportunity. This is what we've been wanting. And now let's go get that cash and get some housing in the community. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad it was useful. Thanks, everybody.